In 1991, a game came along that forever changed one specific genre. In fact, it created said genre in the eyes of millions of people. And that game was Street Fighter II. Sure, there were fighting games before it. However, none were anywhere near as refined, nor as universally praised. Capcom struck a nerve. They captured lightning in a bottle and changed the entire video game industry in the process. Arcades were reinvigorated for however brief a time, and every company under the sun would start making fighting games in hopes to try and steal some of Street Fighter II's thunder. That story pretty much everyone knows. And, well, what has been debated for a long time throughout the years is whether or not Street Fighter II or Fatal Fury came first, as both games were in development more or less at the exact same time. But what isn't debatable is the fact that the original creator of the first Street Fighter game, Takashi Nishiyama, was also the main man behind Fatal Fury. No one also argues about the fact that Street Fighter II was the single most influential fighting game at that particular point in time, and pretty much to this very day. Fatal Fury was an interesting first attempt by SNK, but ultimately falls short and would be eclipsed by many other fighting games SNK would release in the years ahead. Interestingly though, the last Fatal Fury game ever made, Mark of the Wolves, just so happens to be one of the very best fighting games ever made. So go figure. This MVS version of Fatal Fury only has 3 playable characters: Terry Bogard, Andy Bogard, and Joe Higashi. That's it, that's all. While there are 11 fighters total, this MVS version has all of them locked. So that's a little bit unfortunate. Especially when you think that this particular cast of characters would eventually become synonymous with the SNK brand, and that makes it so much more frustrating that you really only get to play as 3 playable characters. Multiplayer also works a little bit differently than you might be used to if you're a fan of Street Fighter II. Here, as player 1 is going up against the CPU, and someone happened to walk by and put in a token and wanted to play as player 2, well, they would actually select their character, jump in, and help player 1 beat the CPU character before heading off to fight one another. It was kind of unique. Another element that usually surprises longtime fans of fighting games is that Fatal Fury is actually only a 3-button fighter. You have 1 kick, 1 punch, and 1 throw button. That's it. So your move list is somewhat limiting. And I'm going to say it again, but this is one of the reasons why having such a small roster to play as really hurt the game. Because you will learn these 3 characters extremely quickly, and then there's really not too much left to do. The biggest difference with Fatal Fury and the rest of fighting games at the time is the fact that there are 2 planes that you can switch between. It's a bizarre system as there's no button to do so. So what happens is you end up relying on the computer-controlled character to make the first move. If they jump into the background, if you press up on the joystick, he'll just automatically jump off into the background. It's kind of weird. And to be really honest, I never really liked the plane system, and thankfully SNK would eventually move away from it, so I was very happy about that back in the day. Ultimately though, Fatal Fury is a fun game, but it's largely forgettable when you compare it to Street Fighter II or a lot of the other fighting games at the time. I will say that the game features nice large sprites, smooth scaling, although the animation is a little bit choppy. I also really appreciated the fact that after every round the time of day changes, so it'll go from morning to afternoon to night, which is pretty cool. And there's also a really neat looking rain effect, which was very impressive for its time. Fatal Fury, King of Fighters, as it's officially called, can only be recommended today to history buffs or SNK diehards, who just like to see where this series sort of started off and how SNK sort of got into fighting games. This game would be just about eclipsed overnight by SNK itself, so just, look at all the other games that are available in the Arcade Archives collection and just go from there and pick and choose what you'd like to check out. If you do have to pick one Fatal Fury game, I highly recommend checking out Mark of the Wolves. That's a superb game.